0.050 seconds. That is the entire gap between Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc after 11 races, and Ferrari is quietly telling you it means Leclerc is still winning. It doesn't. It means something Ferrari never planned for, because 1 year ago, that gap wasn't 0.05 of a second. It was a canyon. And the fact that it is now the width of a painted line at the apex is the story nobody at Maranello wants to say out loud. Let's start where everyone else stops. Racing News 365 crunched the numbers on every teammate pairing on the grid, and one duel came out tighter than any other, tighter than Norris and Piastri, tighter than Verstappen and his rookie, tighter than all 11 pairs. Leclerc versus Hamilton. 6 qualifying wins to 5 in Leclerc's favor, and on average, across the whole season, Leclerc just 50 thousandths of a second faster over a single lap. In Belgium, the two of them were split by 2 thousandths of a second. You blink slower than that. And the headline writes itself. Leclerc edges Hamilton. Ferrari's young star still has the measure of the old champion. But here's the problem with that headline: it's measuring the wrong thing. Rewind 12 months. This exact pairing, this exact garage. In 2025, Hamilton's first season in Ferrari Red, Leclerc didn't edge him. He buried him. 19-5 in qualifying. 242 points to 156. 7 podiums to 0. Not close, not competitive, a season so lopsided that half the paddock started writing Hamilton's obituary as a frontrunner. The verdict was everywhere, and it was brutal. Ferrari had spent a fortune on a fading champion. A marketing signing. A man whose instincts belonged to a different era of car and would never bend to Maranello's machinery. Now hold those two pictures side by side. 19-5. Then 6-5. A landslide, then a photo finish. That is not two drivers standing still and swapping a few tenths. That is one driver closing a gap that was supposed to be permanent and closing it on the one surface where his rival is strongest. Which brings us to the question that breaks the whole narrative. If Leclerc is still winning qualifying, 6 sessions to 5, how on earth is Hamilton 31 points ahead of him in the championship? Because he is. At the summer break, Hamilton sits second in the World Championship on 169 points. Leclerc is fourth on 138. The man losing on Saturday is comfortably beating his teammate over a season. And the answer to how that's possible is the first crack in Ferrari's comfortable story, but the biggest reason comes a little later, so hold on to that. And to feel the full weight of that, you have to understand who Hamilton is measuring himself against on a Saturday. This isn't a driver dragging Leclerc down to his level. Charles Leclerc is, by reputation and by record, one of the great qualifiers of his generation, a driver who has repeatedly stuck cars on pole they had no business being on, whom rivals and engineers alike still name as the fastest man over a single lap in the whole sport. Qualifying is his cathedral. It is the one place where, even in a bad car, he is untouchable. So this gap isn't closing on Leclerc's weakness. It's closing on his single greatest strength in his own team, in a car shaped around years of his feedback, on the surface he owns. First, you have to understand why that 50 thousandths of a second matters so much more than it looks. Qualifying isn't just another session. It is the single hardest thing in Formula One to transplant from one team to another. And to see why, you have to understand what a driver is actually doing on a qualifying lap. In a race, you can think. You can manage the tires, adapt, feel your way into a car over 50 laps, correct a mistake on the next corner. A qualifying lap gives you none of that. It asks you to commit to the absolute limit of the car, the exact millisecond the brakes bite, the precise amount the rear will tolerate on entry before it steps out, how you spend a finite burst of electrical energy across one perfect lap, and to commit to all of it on instinct before your conscious brain has caught up. That instinct is built over years in one type of car. Change the car, change the brand of brakes, change the way the rear behaves, and the instinct is suddenly lying to you. That is what happened to Hamilton in 2025. The car fought him. Ferrari's brakes bit differently to the Mercedes discs his right foot had trusted for a decade. The engine braking felt alien, the low downforce. Nervous rear punished the exact aggressive entry that made him Hamilton. He wasn't slow because he'd forgotten how to drive. He He was slow because every instinct he owned was calibrated to a car he no longer had. And here is the part that gets lost. Fixing that isn't a driving trick you can learn in an afternoon. Hamilton had to rebuild the instinct itself, and, crucially, he had to change the hardware to meet it halfway. He pushed hard until Ferrari agreed to switch him to the carbon industry brake discs he'd trusted at Mercedes, breaking from Brembo, the supplier Ferrari had partnered with for years. He changed how he used the simulator. None of it was glamorous. All of it was the difference between a canyon and a painted line. And there was a second instinct he had to build from scratch, one nobody had to teach him in the old days. The 2026 cars run a 50-50 split between engine and electrical power, with a huge burst of deployment every lap that a driver has to ration and spend himself. On a qualifying lap, getting that deployment perfect where you dump the energy, where you save it, how you avoid running flat before the line is worth real lap time. Hamilton spent a decade in the old hybrid era mastering that skill in a Mercedes. In 2026, he had to relearn it in a Ferrari, on tracks where a single misjudged burst is the difference between pole and third row. That's part of what those early gaps were made of. And it's part of what he's clawed back. So when you see that gap shrink, watch how it shrinks. At the start of the year, the biggest margin between them came at Barcelona over 0.2, a genuine gulf. By mid-season, in Belgium, it was 0.2. The direction of travel is the whole story. Not a driver who arrived equal, but a driver erasing a deficit in real time, race by race, on the metric that is hardest to erase. And the race results tracked it. By Miami, the two Ferraris left the weekend dead level on points. At the Canadian Grand Prix, Hamilton finished so far up the road that the gap back to Leclerc was 34 seconds, the widest either driver had put on the other all year. For a stretch of the season, the man everyone had written off wasn't matching Leclerc. He was the clear number one at Ferrari. And Leclerc was the one doing damage limitation. Then Silverstone happened, and Leclerc bit back. So don't mistake this for a straight line. It's a genuine fight, swinging one way then the other. But step back from the week to week, and the shape is unmistakable. A duel that started as a mismatch has become the tightest on the entire grid, tighter than Norris and Piastri at McLaren, tighter than any pairing in the field. That is not something you'd have believed possible watching 2025. If you're finding this useful, take a second to subscribe. This channel goes deep on exactly these Hamilton and Ferrari stories every week. Now, before this turns into a coronation, let's be honest about what this gap is not. It is not Hamilton beating Leclerc on pure speed. Leclerc still leads the qualifying head-to-head. He is still, on average, the faster man over one lap, and many in the paddock still rate him the quickest single-lap driver in the entire sport. That reputation is earned, and it hasn't gone anywhere. And Leclerc has not simply rolled over. From the British Grand Prix onward, he flexed. He won at Silverstone a controlled, commanding drive and reasserted himself as the man who can still out-qualify a 7-time champion on his day. Part of his points deficit isn't Hamilton being faster at all, it's rotten luck. He retired at Monaco, crashing out at the final corner on a late restart at his home race. He retired at Barcelona. He hit brake trouble in Canada. Strip out the mechanical carnage and the championship picture between these two is far closer than 31 points suggests. But that's exactly why the qualifying number is so dangerous for Ferrari, because it can't be explained away by luck. You can lose points to a broken car. You cannot lose 0.2 of your one-lap advantage to a broken car. Pace over a single lap is the purest thing in the sport. And that is the number that has moved. So here is the turning point, the thing the stat sheet hides. The number that should worry Maranello isn't 0.050 seconds. It's the journey from 19.5 to 6.5. Ferrari signed Lewis Hamilton believing they were getting a glorious, well-paid number 2, a champion, to sell shirts, sit respectfully behind their homegrown star, and lend the badge some stardust. What they actually got, 18 months later, is a 40-year-old who has reversed the points, dragged the qualifying duel to the closest on the grid, and shows every sign of getting stronger. And Fred Vasseur knows it. Listen to how carefully he's playing this. He flatly refuses to name a number 1 driver. He insists the internal battle is a gift, not a problem that the two of them push each other to a higher level. Even in free practice, the most important thing for them is to be ahead of their teammate, he says, and he frames that as fuel for development. He even explains Hamilton's revival simply, it's always much easier the second one, because you are part of the project. But read between those lines. A team principal only insists this loudly that he doesn't need to choose when everyone can see that, soon, he might have to. Because the flip side of two drivers at their peak is two drivers who both believe the title should be theirs, and there is no version of that story that stays comfortable if the car gets quick enough to win. Former driver Jolyon Palmer put the danger bluntly. You've got a man who has won 7 championships against a generational talent still chasing his first. And if they're evenly matched in a fast car, I don't think there's a way that Fred could manage it. We have seen this movie. Mercedes 2016, Hamilton and Rosberg, 2 number ones in one garage. A relationship that detonated so completely it drove a champion into retirement. So let me put the question to you, because Ferrari genuinely doesn't have an answer yet. If this comes down to a championship, should Ferrari finally pick a number 1 and throw everything behind him, or let 2 of the best drivers alive race each other to the end, and risk it all blowing up? Tell me in the comments, because Maranello is asking itself the exact same thing. And the timing could not be sharper. Both Ferrari drivers are still mathematically in the title fight, chasing a 19-year-old in Kimi Antonelli, who leads the championship. Hamilton is 50 points back. He has a history of coming alive in the second half of a season. His championship years were often decided after the summer break. He has already warned that Ferrari were 3 to 4 tenths down on the straights in the first half, and that upgrades are coming. Ferrari are bringing an engine and turbo update at Zandvoort or Monza aimed squarely at that straight-line deficit. And there's a subtler reason Vasseur is happy to let this run. When you have 2 elite drivers this closely matched, you get 2 reference points, 2 ways of reading the car, 2 sets of feedback that expose different weaknesses. Vasseur has said openly that part of Ferrari's performance comes precisely from the comparison between the 2 of them. In other words, the rivalry that could tear the team apart is the same rivalry making the car quicker. It's a beautiful arrangement right up until both drivers are fighting for the same championship, and whoever's faster on the day stops being an acceptable answer. Now play it forward. Hand Hamilton a car that's quick on the straights. At the exact moment his one-lap instinct has finally come back, in the half of the season where he's historically strongest, and that 6.5 qualifying gap doesn't just close. It could invert. The man Ferrari signed as a number 2 could walk out of the summer break as the fastest driver in their garage on a Saturday as well as a Sunday, which leaves one more question worth sitting with. Is Charles Leclerc still the quickest man in that Ferrari, or is he now only the quickest on Saturday, watching a 40-year-old close the last gap he thought was his forever? Because that's what this really comes down to. The 0.050-second gap was never a measure of how far apart these two are. It was a measure of how far Hamilton has traveled from a 19.5 humiliation and a written-off career to the closest teammate duel in Formula One, with the points lead already in his pocket. 0.05 of a second is all that's left of a gap that was once a chasm, and it is still shrinking. Ferrari didn't sign that man. They signed a fading champion and a marketing coup. What they got was a problem the whole grid would kill for 2 number ones, 1 steering wheel apiece, and a team principal insisting he'll never have to choose, right up until the day he does. If you want to see who blinks first when F1 comes back at Zandvoort, subscribe and stick around. This is going to be the best fight of the second half, and it's happening inside one garage, because the closest duel on the grid isn't between 2 teams. It's between 2 teammates in red, and one of them just closed a canyon nobody thought he could. 6. SEO-optimized YouTube description: Lewis Hamilton is closing in on Charles Leclerc, and the numbers tell a story Ferrari never planned for. After 11 races of the 2026 Formula One season, Leclerc leads the qualifying head-to-head just 6.5, an average of only 0.050 seconds a lap, the closest teammate duel on the entire grid. In Belgium, the 2 Ferraris were split by 0.02 of a second. But this documentary goes past the headline stat to the real story. 1 year ago, in Hamilton's first Ferrari season, Leclerc destroyed him 19-5 in qualifying, 242 points to 156, 7 podiums to none. Everyone called Hamilton a fading champion. Now that same qualifying gap has collapsed to almost nothing, and Hamilton is 31 points clear of Leclerc in the championship, second only to Kimi Antonelli. We break down why one lap pace is the hardest thing in F1 to transplant between teams, how Hamilton's brake disc fight and simulator changes rebuilt an instinct the SF26 had broken, and why Fred Vasseur's refusal to name a #1 driver may be the most revealing decision at Maranello. We cover the Barcelona to Belgium convergence, Leclerc's reliability heartbreak at Monaco and Canada, his Silverstone fightback, and the ghost of Hamilton and Rosberg in 2016 that haunts every two #1 team. With Ferrari's engine upgrade due at Zandvoort or Monza and Hamilton historically stronger after the summer break, the balance of power inside Ferrari could invert completely in the second half. Watch until the end to find out why a 0.050 second gap should frighten Ferrari, not reassure them. If you love deep, honest Formula One analysis on Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, and the 2026 title fight, subscribe for a new documentary every week.